8 years of saving every penny, working overtime, and living with roommates, I bought my first house. A modest 3-bedroom in a good neighborhood. I was so proud I decided to host a housewarming party for my family. My sister Melissa would bring her 3 kids. I spent days cleaning, decorating, and cooking. I was excited to show everyone what I'd accomplished. I had no idea they were coming with a different agenda entirely. If you're enjoying this story so far, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like mine. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for what happens next. Growing up in Chicago's suburbs, I learned early on that my place in the family hierarchy was complicated. My parents, Margaret and Thomas Wilson, weren't terrible people, but they definitely played favorites. And that favorite was never me. My sister Melissa is 4 years older than me. She was always the pretty one, the social butterfly, the one who needed extra attention because she was sensitive. Meanwhile, I was the quiet, responsible child who got good grades and stayed out of trouble. You'd think parents would appreciate that, right? Not mine. I put myself through college at the University of Illinois, studying computer science. I applied for every scholarship possible, worked part-time at the campus library, and took out minimal student loans. My parents helped Melissa through 3 different attempts at college, none of which she completed. She's trying to find herself, they'd explain. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a software company in Chicago. The pay wasn't great at first, but I was determined to build a career. I shared a tiny apartment with 2 other girls to save money. Every month, I put aside whatever I could for my future home. Melissa's life took a different path. By 24, she'd had her first child, Emma, with her then-husband Rick. They divorced a year later. 2 years after that came Dylan with boyfriend Justin, who disappeared before Dylan's first birthday. Then 3 years ago, she had little Sophia with husband number 2, Craig, who lasted slightly longer than Justin but was gone by Sophia's second birthday. After each breakup, Melissa would move back in with our parents. They'd help with childcare, bills, and emotional support. I love my nieces and nephew, but I couldn't help noticing a pattern. Melissa would make impulsive decisions, face the consequences, and our parents would bail her out. Family helps family, my mother would say whenever I questioned this arrangement. Meanwhile, I continued saving. I skipped vacations my friends took. I drove the same used Honda for 10 years. I packed lunches instead of eating out. For 8 years, I lived frugally with a single goal, owning my own home. Last year, I got promoted to senior developer. The salary bump finally put homeownership within reach. I spent 6 months house hunting, working with a realtor to find something affordable yet comfortable. The house I eventually bought wasn't fancy. A 1990s build, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, with a small backyard. The previous owners had maintained it well, though it needed cosmetic updates. The kitchen had outdated oak cabinets, and the carpet in the bedrooms had seen better days. But it was structurally sound in a safe neighborhood with good schools, thinking ahead, and most importantly, it was mine. I closed on the house in April and spent the next 2 months painting, replacing flooring, and making it feel like home. I splurged on a new couch, but found most of my furniture at secondhand stores and refreshed it myself. Every nail I hammered, every wall I painted, felt like an achievement. Throughout this time, Melissa was living with our parents again. Her latest apartment situation had unexpectedly ended with an eviction notice. At family dinners, she'd complain about sharing a room with Sophia while Emma and Dylan doubled up in another. "We're practically on top of each other," she'd sigh dramatically. Our parents would glance at me as if I should offer a solution. I'd been living in my house for almost 3 months when I decided to host a housewarming party. My best friend Allison thought I was crazy. "Your family has never appreciated anything you've done," she reminded me over coffee. "Remember your college graduation? Your mom spent the whole time talking about Melissa's new boyfriend." "This is different," I insisted. "I want them to see what I've accomplished. Maybe they'll finally be proud of me." Allison gave me that look friends give when they know you're making a mistake, but love you anyway. "Just be careful. Don't let them rain on your parade." I should have listened to her. But despite everything, I still craved my parents' approval. I wanted them to see me as successful, to validate my choices the way they always validated Melissa's. So I sent out invitations to my parents, Melissa and her kids, my Aunt Grace, my mother's sister, a couple of cousins, and a few friends, including Allison. I planned a Saturday afternoon gathering with food, drinks, and a proper house tour. I even created a little photo album documenting the before and after of my renovation projects. What I didn't realize was that my family had been having conversations about my house purchase. Conversations that didn't include me. Conversations that would turn my housewarming celebration into something I never expected. The week before the party, I took Friday off work to prepare. I'd created a spreadsheet. Yes, I'm that person, with tasks, shopping lists, and a timeline. I wanted everything to be perfect. This wasn't just about showing off my house. It was about proving to my family that I'd made good choices, that my path was valid too. I woke up early and headed to the grocery store with my carefully planned list. Finger foods, a signature cocktail I'd found on Pinterest, ingredients for my grandmother's famous chocolate cake. I splurged on fancy cheese and real linen napkins. As I filled my cart, I imagined my mother's impressed expression when she saw the spread. Maybe she'd finally acknowledge that my attention to detail was a strength, not just being uptight, as she often called it. My phone rang as I was selecting avocados for guacamole. It was Allison. Just checking that we're still on for tonight, she said. We'd planned a prep session where she'd help me with the more complicated recipes. Absolutely. I'm at the store now spending way too much money on cheese no one will appreciate. You know you could just order pizza, and they wouldn't know the difference, right? I laughed. I know. But I want to do this properly. Your version of properly is most people's version of Martha Stewart magazine's spread. But I admire your commitment. Need me to bring anything? Just your moral support and kitchen skills. After checking out and trying not to wince at the total, I spent the afternoon cleaning. I already kept a tidy house, but this was deep clean territory. I washed baseboards, polished faucets, and even cleaned inside the refrigerator, although no one would look there. Again, I knew I was overdoing it, but I couldn't help myself. Allison arrived at 6 with a bottle of wine and her usual straight talk. Let's set some boundaries before tomorrow, she said as we chopped vegetables for a dip. What's your exit strategy if your family starts pulling their usual stuff? What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean. Your mom making backhanded compliments. Your dad ignoring your achievements. Melissa doing something dramatic to get attention. I concentrated on dicing bell peppers. It won't be like that this time. They'll be on their best behavior as guests in my home. Allison's silence spoke volumes.
Ok, fine, y conceded.
If things get uncomfortable, I'll find you and give our signal. You can create a diversion. That's more like it, she nodded approvingly. And remember, this is your house. Your rules. If anyone gets out of line, you have every right to address it. We spent the evening prepping food, arranging furniture for optimal flow, and putting final touches on decorations. I'd bought fresh flowers for the dining table and each bathroom. Little touches that made the house feel special. As Allison was leaving, she gave me a tight hug. I'm really proud of you, Harper. This place is amazing and you did it all yourself. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. I slept restlessly that night, both excited and anxious. Morning came quickly, and I was up at 6 making the cake and setting up the drink station. Everything was on schedule until my phone rang at 9:30. It was Melissa. Hey sis, she said, the sound of children arguing in the background. Is it okay if we come a bit early? The kids are driving me crazy, and I thought maybe I could help you set up. In our entire lives, Melissa had never voluntarily helped with preparations for anything. But I wanted to believe her.
Sure, I said.
I'm pretty much ready, but you could help me arrange the food platters. She arrived 45 minutes later, not with offers to help but with complaints about the drive and 3 overstimulated children who immediately ran through my house like they were at a playground. Kids, settle down, Melissa called half-heartedly as 7-year-old Emma jumped on my new couch with her shoes on. Actually, could you please have them remove their shoes? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. And maybe jumping isn't the best idea on the furniture. Melissa rolled her eyes, but told Emma to stop. Sorry, Harper's house has special rules, she said with a tone that clearly communicated she thought I was being unreasonable. Within 20 minutes, 5-year-old Dylan had spilled apple juice on my newly refinished hardwood floors, and 3-year-old Sophia had discovered my collection of glass paperweights I'd foolishly left on a low shelf. Thankfully, I caught her before anything broke. Melissa sat at my kitchen island, scrolling through her phone while I cleaned up the spill and moved breakables to higher ground. Your house is so clean, she commented, making it sound like an accusation. Wait until you have kids. You'll realize none of this matters. I bit my tongue. I'd learned long ago that defending myself to Melissa only led to arguments where she'd eventually cry, making me the bad guy for upsetting her. Can I get you something to drink? I offered instead. I made a pitcher of sangria. God, yes, she said, finally putting down her phone. The kids have been nightmares today. Emma's going through a phase where she talks back about everything. As I poured her drink, Melissa looked around my kitchen with a calculating expression that made me uneasy. This is a big house for just one person, she remarked. What do you even do with 3 bedrooms? One's my bedroom, one's my home office, and the third is a guest room, I explained, though I didn't know her justification for my choices. Must be nice, she said with a sigh. We're crammed into Mom and Dad's place like sardines. The kids have no space to play. I felt the familiar twinge of guilt she was so skilled at inducing. How's the job search going? I asked, changing the subject.
Impossible.
No one wants to work around a single mom's schedule, and childcare costs more than I'd make anyway. She took a large swallow of sangria. Mom and Dad have been helping, but you know how Dad gets about money. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. The rest of my family had arrived, right on time at noon. I plastered on a smile and went to welcome them, trying to shake the sense of foreboding Melissa's presence had created. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The way Melissa examined each room, like she was taking inventory. The whispered conversation with my mother in the hallway that abruptly stopped when I approached. The knowing looks exchanged between my father and Melissa when I showed them the guest room with its pull-out sofa. But I was too busy playing the perfect hostess, too desperate for their approval to notice they'd arrived with an agenda that had nothing to do with celebrating my achievement. The doorbell chimed, and I took a deep breath. Showtime. I opened the door to find my parents, Margaret and Thomas, standing there with tight smiles and a houseplant I recognized from their living room hastily wrapped in cellophane. Harper, honey, my mother said, air-kissing near my cheeks. The house is quaint. Just perfect for a starter home. Thanks, Mom, I replied, already feeling deflated by her phrasing. Starter home implied temporary, a stepping stone rather than an achievement. My father gave me a brief side hug. Good to see you making adult choices finally. Though real estate can be a risky investment. Behind them stood Aunt Grace, my mother's younger sister, and my favorite relative. Unlike the rest of my family, Grace had always seen me clearly. She pushed past my parents with a genuine smile and a properly wrapped gift. It's beautiful, Harper, she said warmly. I'm so proud of you. Over the next 20 minutes, the rest of the guests arrived. My cousins Jack and Diana, and finally Allison, whose reassuring presence helped calm my nerves. Let me give you all the grand tour, I offered once everyone had a drink in hand. I led them through each room, pointing out the improvements I'd made and sharing plans for future projects. My mother nodded politely, but seemed distracted, her eyes repeatedly drifting to Melissa's children running through the house. The guest room is a good size, my father commented as we reached the final bedroom. Plenty of room for a proper bed instead of that pull-out. He exchanged a meaningful glance with my mother that I couldn't interpret. The pull-out works for my needs, I explained. I don't have overnight guests often. Such a waste of space, my mother murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. We moved to the backyard next, a modest space where I'd set up a small patio set and planted some flowers. Emma, Dylan, and Sophia would love playing out here, my mother said pointedly. Their current backyard is all concrete. They're welcome to visit, I replied carefully. Aunt Grace caught my eye and raised an eyebrow. She'd noticed the undercurrents, too. Back inside, I invited everyone to help themselves to the food I'd spent hours preparing. As people filled their plates, I overheard snippets of conversation. Must be nice having all this space to yourself. I can't believe she can afford this on her salary. Melissa's kids really need their own rooms at their ages. I busied myself refreshing drinks and tried to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. Allison appeared at my side with an empty serving dish. "Your family is being weird," she whispered. "What's going on?" "I have no idea," I replied, "but something definitely is." During dinner, I sat between Aunt Grace and Allison, grateful for their buffer. Across the table, my parents kept whispering to each other while Melissa attempted to manage her children's behavior with minimal effort. "Use your fork, Dylan," she'd say half-heartedly as he grabbed pasta with his fingers. When he ignored her and wiped his sauce-covered hands on my dining chair, she just sighed. Kids, right? Meanwhile, Emma had already spilled her drink twice, and Sophia was systematically picking apart my centerpiece, dropping flower petals into her water glass. "Perhaps the children would like to watch TV in the living room?" Aunt Grace suggested, clearly trying to help. "Great idea," Melissa agreed, making no move to accompany them. "Harper, can you find something for them to watch?" I set the kids up with a cartoon, grateful for the momentary peace, though I cringed when I returned to find Emma had taken her plate with her and was now eating directly over my new area rug. Back at the table, the conversation had shifted to Melissa's living situation. "It's just so hard," she was saying. "The kids have no privacy. Emma's getting to an age where she needs her own space." "It's not ideal for any of us," my mother agreed. "Your father and I are too old to have little ones underfoot constantly." "If only there were a solution," my father added, looking directly at me. The implication hung in the air. My chest tightened as I realized what was happening. This wasn't a housewarming party. It was an ambush. Allison must have sensed my distress because she jumped in with a story about her recent disastrous date, temporarily diverting attention. I gave her a grateful look as I cleared plates, my hands slightly shaking. In the kitchen, Aunt Grace joined me. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "They want my house," I whispered, the realization settling like a stone in my stomach. That's what this is about. Grace's expression confirmed my suspicion. "I've been hearing things," she admitted. "Margaret's been talking about how perfect your place would be for Melissa. I didn't think they'd actually try to pressure you, though." Before I could respond, we heard the distinctive sound of glass breaking followed by Melissa's exasperated, "Seriously, Emma?" I returned to the dining room to find my mother already cleaning up shards of what had been a decorative bowl, while my father shook his head. "Sorry about that," Melissa said without looking particularly sorry. "Kids are just so active at this age. They need space to run around. Like a house with a yard," my mother added pointedly. I caught Allison's eye across the room. She gave me our prearranged signal, touching her earring twice. It meant, "Need an exit?" I shook my head slightly. Whatever was coming, I needed to face it. My father cleared his throat and tapped his glass with a spoon. The room fell silent except for the cartoon sounds drifting in from the living room. "Since we're all gathered here," he began, "I think it's time we discuss something important." And just like that, the trap was sprung. My father stood at the head of my dining table, commanding the room's attention like he was chairing a board meeting. His expression was a familiar one, the look he wore when he believed he was being perfectly reasonable while actually imposing his will. "First, I want to say congratulations to Harper on this milestone," he began, though his tone conveyed obligation rather than genuine pride. "Buying your first home is certainly an achievement." A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Aunt Grace caught my eye, her concern evident. "That said," my father continued, "I think we need to address the elephant in the room. This house, while lovely, represents an imbalance in our family that I believe we should correct." My stomach dropped. Next to me, I felt Allison stiffen. "Harper, you're a single woman with a good job and bright prospects. You have this whole house to yourself, with rooms sitting empty most of the time. He gestured around as if my home's spaciousness was somehow offensive. Meanwhile, your sister and her 3 children are cramped in 2 rooms at our house. My mother nodded vigorously. It's not healthy for growing children, she added. Emma's almost 8. She needs her own space. I glanced at Melissa, who was examining her nails with a practiced look of forced humility that didn't quite hide her smirk. She'd known this was coming. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked, though I already knew. My father straightened his shoulders. We think the right thing for you to do would be to give this house to Melissa and the children. Despite anticipating it, hearing the words spoken aloud sent a shock through my system. My home. The one I'd worked 8 years to afford. The one I'd spent months renovating. They expected me to just hand it over. Give her my house, I repeated slowly. The house I saved for. The house I pay the mortgage on. We'd help with the transition, of course. My mother jumped in. You could move into Melissa's rooms at her house until you find an apartment. Something cozier, more appropriate for a single person. The casual cruelty of their proposal left me momentarily speechless. Allison had no such constraint. Are you serious right now? She asked incredulously. Harper worked for years to afford this place. My father barely glanced at her. This is a family matter, Allison. A family matter, I echoed, finding my voice. So, as family, you think it's appropriate to ask me to give up my home that I worked for, saved for, and renovated? It's not just about what's appropriate. My cousin Jack chimed in unexpectedly. It's about need. Melissa needs this house more than you do. I looked around the table, stunned to see several nodding heads. They'd discussed this before. This wasn't a spontaneous suggestion. It was a coordinated intervention. Think about the children, my mother pressed. They deserve stability, a yard to play in, bedrooms of their own. They deserve it, I repeated. And I don't. Don't be selfish, Harper. Melissa finally spoke, her voice dripping with practiced victimhood. You know how hard things have been for me. The kids and I have been bouncing around for years. They need roots. I understand that, but Do you? My father interrupted. Because from where I sit, it looks like you have everything while your sister struggles. What kind of person puts their own comfort above the needs of children? Your own nieces and nephew? The emotional manipulation was so blatant it should have been laughable, but years of conditioning had me second-guessing myself. Was I being selfish? Should I sacrifice my home for Melissa's children? Aunt Grace's firm voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. That's enough, Thomas. You're being completely unreasonable. Stay out of this, Grace, my mother snapped. You've always encouraged Harper's selfish tendencies. Selfish. Grace looked incredulous. Working hard and achieving goals is selfish now. My father ignored her, focusing his attention on me. Harper, we're not asking for a decision this minute, though sooner would be better for everyone. Melissa's landlord is selling the building, and they need to be out by the end of next month.
Wait.
Landlord? I thought Melissa was living with you, I said, confused. A flash of panic crossed my mother's face before she composed herself. That's the plan once they have to leave their current place. But your house would be much better. Something wasn't adding up. I looked at Melissa, who avoided my gaze. The point is, my father pressed on, this is a chance for you to do the right thing. To put family first. The right thing, I repeated, trying to process what was happening. We could even make it official tonight, my mother suggested with forced brightness. I brought some paperwork. Just a simple transfer of deed. We'd handle all the details. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. They'd brought legal documents to my housewarming party. The audacity was stunning. You want me to sign over my house? Tonight. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. It would be easiest, my father confirmed. Clean break, no prolonged stress about it. Dylan chose that moment to run into the dining room, face smeared with chocolate from the cake he'd apparently helped himself to. Mom, Emma won't share the big TV remote. Use the small TV in Aunt Harper's bedroom, Melissa told him without hesitation, as if my personal space was already communal property. My bedroom is off limits, I said automatically, then realized how ridiculous this whole situation had become. I was defending my right to privacy in my own home while my family planned its redistribution. "See, this is exactly why you don't need all this space," my mother said, gesturing toward me as if I'd proven her point. "You're too particular. Children need room to be children." I felt tears threatening and fought them back. I wouldn't cry.
Not now.
"I think," I said carefully, "that I need a minute." I stood up from the table and walked to my bathroom on slightly wobbly legs. Once inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing deeply. My phone buzzed with a text from Allison. "Are you okay? Want me to clear everyone out? This is insane." I texted back. "Give me 5 minutes. I need to think." Sitting on the edge of my bathtub, I tried to make sense of what was happening. My family had come to my housewarming party with the express purpose of taking my house from me. They'd brought paperwork. They'd coordinated their arguments. They'd planned this. And they genuinely seemed to believe they were being reasonable. Years of family dynamics flashed through my mind. Melissa's needs always coming first. My achievements minimized or ignored. The constant expectation that I would be the responsible one, the one who sacrificed, the one who gave in. A lifetime of conditioning nearly had me considering their request. Maybe I could find an apartment. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe family really did come first. Then I heard it. Through the bathroom door, the unmistakable sound of my mother's voice. "She'll come around. Harper always does what's expected eventually. She just likes to make a show of independence first." The casual dismissal of my autonomy, the certainty that I would ultimately bend to their will, it cut through my confusion like a knife. In that moment, something crystallized within me. This was my house.
Mine.
And I was done letting my family dictate my choices or diminish my achievements. I splashed cold water on my face, checked my reflection, and unlocked the bathroom door. It was time to reclaim my power. It was time to stand up for myself, even if it meant standing alone. I remained in the bathroom longer than I'd planned, my hands gripping the edge of the sink as I tried to steady my breathing.
My phone buzzed again.
Another text from Allison. "Your dad is showing Melissa's kids their new rooms. This is beyond messed up. Do you want me to say something?" I texted back quickly. "No, I'll handle it. But I need you to stay." Standing up straight, I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, but my eyes were clear. For the first time, I truly saw the pattern that had defined my family relationships. I wasn't just an afterthought. I was a resource to be tapped whenever Melissa needed bailing out. But no more. This house was where I drew the line. I slipped out of the bathroom, and instead of returning directly to the dining room, I took a detour toward the voices I heard coming from the guest bedroom. There I found my father with Emma and Dylan, discussing furniture arrangements. "This room would be perfect for you, Emma," he was saying. "And Dylan, you'd have the room across the hall. Your mom would take the main bedroom, and Sophia could have the little nook off the hallway as her own special space." "When are we moving in, Grandpa?" Emma asked excitedly. "Soon, sweetheart. Aunt Harper just needs to handle some paperwork." I cleared my throat from the doorway. My father turned, not even having the decency to look embarrassed at being caught. "Harper, good. The kids are excited about the move. Aren't you kids?" Emma nodded enthusiastically. "I'm going to paint my room purple." A wave of anger washed over me, but I kept my voice steady. "Dad, can I speak with you privately?" He followed me to the hallway, his expression confident. He truly believed I would capitulate. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said before I could speak. "We all know this is the right solution." "The right solution," I repeated, "to a problem I didn't create and am not responsible for solving." His face hardened. "That's a very selfish attitude." "Is it? Or is it selfish to expect your younger daughter to give up her home to solve your older daughter's problems?" Again. His eyes widened slightly at my directness. I'd never spoken to him this way before. "Your sister has 3 children to support," he began, falling back on his most effective emotional leverage. "Yes, she does. And whose responsibility is that, Dad? Not mine." I love my nieces and nephew, but their housing situation is not my problem to solve by giving up my home. Family helps family, he insisted, his go-to phrase whenever he wanted me to sacrifice for Melissa. Really? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like only certain family members are expected to help, while others just take. I could hear voices from the dining room now. My mother was speaking to someone, her tone defensive. You're overreacting, my father said dismissively. We're just asking you to consider the needs of the whole family. No, I countered, finding strength in my growing anger. You're not asking me to consider anything. You brought legal documents to my housewarming party. You're telling my niece she can paint her room in my house. This isn't a discussion, it's an ambush. I walked past and back toward the dining room, where I found my mother showing Melissa what appeared to be printouts of nearby apartment listings. These would be perfect for Harper, she was saying. Close to her work and much more reasonable for a single person. They'd planned everything. Every detail. They'd even researched apartments for me to move into after surrendering my house. The room fell silent as I entered. All eyes turned to me, expressions ranging from expectant my mother, to concerned Aunt Grace, to smug Melissa. I need everyone to listen carefully, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I will not be giving my house to Melissa. Not today, not ever. This discussion is over. My mother gasped as if I'd slapped her. Harper Jane Wilson, how dare you be so selfish? It's not selfish to keep something I worked for, Mom. After everything we've done for you, my father said, entering the room behind me. This is how you repay us? What exactly have you done for me? I asked, genuinely curious. You didn't help with college. You didn't help with the down payment on this house. You've never even offered emotional support for my goals. We raised you, my mother exclaimed, as if that entitled them to everything I would ever own. Yes, you did. And now I'm an adult making my own decisions. And my decision is to keep my house. Melissa, sensing that her plan was falling apart, switched tactics. She burst into tears, a strategy that had worked reliably since childhood. How am I supposed to tell my kids they can't have a stable home? She sobbed. They were so excited. You shouldn't have promised them something that wasn't yours to give, I replied, unmoved by the tears I knew were mostly performative. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. If you do this, Harper, if you choose your own selfish comfort over the needs of your sister and her children, there will be consequences. What consequences, Dad? Will you cut me off financially? You can't, because you've never supported me. Will you withhold your approval? You've never given it freely, anyway. The brutal truth of my words hung in the air. I heard Allison make a small sound of support from the corner, where she'd been watching the confrontation unfold. You don't mean that, my mother said, her voice trembling. We've always been supportive. When? I challenged. When have you ever celebrated my achievements without comparing them to Melissa's needs? When have you ever put my interests first, even once? This isn't about the past, my father deflected. This is about what's best for the family now. No, this is about what's best for Melissa, as always. And I'm done prioritizing her needs over mine. Melissa's tears intensified. You're punishing my children because you're jealous of me, she accused between dramatic sobs. They're innocent in all this. I'm not punishing anyone, I said firmly. I'm simply not giving away my house. There's a difference. My cousin Diana, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Maybe there's a compromise? Harper, could Melissa and the kids just stay here temporarily until they find something else? I shook my head. Based on past experience, temporary would become permanent. And no, I'm not interested in becoming Melissa's roommate either, I added, seeing my mother about to suggest exactly that. Then I guess you'll never see your nieces and nephew again, Melissa declared dramatically. I can't expose them to someone so heartless and selfish. The emotional blackmail was so transparent it almost made me laugh. Almost. If you choose to use your children as pawns, that's your decision, I said. But my decision about this house is final. My father slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. Enough. Harper, you're being ridiculous. This isn't just about you.
You're right, Dad.
It's about boundaries. And I'm setting one now. I took a deep breath and delivered words I never thought I'd have the courage to say. I think it's time for everyone to leave. A stunned silence fell over the room. No one moved. You can't be serious, my mother finally said. I am. This party is over. Please leave my house. After we came all this way to celebrate with you? Melissa asked incredulously, tears miraculously drying up. We both know celebration wasn't the real purpose of this visit, I replied. My father stood up, his expression thunderous. If you do this, Harper, if you throw your family out, you'd better be prepared for the consequences. Family loyalty goes both ways. Does it? Because from where I'm standing, loyalty in this family has only ever flowed in one direction, toward Melissa. That's it, he declared. Margaret, get your purse. Melissa, gather the children. We're leaving. He turned to me with cold eyes. Until you come to your senses and apologize, you are no longer welcome in our home. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt strangely liberated. I understand. That's your choice, just as keeping my house is mine. My mother began crying as she collected her things, while Melissa hurried to round up her children, whispering loudly enough for me to hear. Aunt Harper doesn't want us to live in her big house. She wants you to be homeless instead. I winced at the manipulation but held my ground as they filed toward the door. My cousins followed awkwardly, murmuring apologies that sounded more obligatory than sincere. At the door, my father delivered his parting shot. When you're alone in this big empty house, I hope you'll realize what really matters in life. I already have, I replied quietly. The door closed behind them, leaving only Aunt Grace, Allison, and me in sudden, deafening silence. I expected to collapse, to break down in tears or regret my decision. Instead, I walked to my living room window and watched my family pile into their cars, still arguing animatedly. As they drove away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. Aunt Grace approached and put her arm around me. I'm proud of you, she said simply. And in that moment, those 5 words meant more to me than any approval I'd ever sought from my parents. The house felt eerily quiet after everyone left. Allison immediately began cleaning up, gathering abandoned plates and half-empty glasses, while I stood frozen in the living room, processing what had just happened. You okay? She asked, returning from the kitchen. I think so, I answered, surprised to find it was true. I'm not sure what happens next, but I know I did the right thing. Damn right you did, Allison confirmed. I've been waiting years for you to stand up to them like that. Aunt Grace emerged from the hallway, where she'd been making a phone call. I just checked with your uncle. We agree that your parents and Melissa are completely out of line. You have our full support, Harper. Tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. These weren't tears of regret or sadness, but of relief and gratitude. Someone in my family was on my side. Thank you, I managed. That means more than you know. I should head out and give you some space, Aunt Grace said, gathering her purse. But I think there are some things you should know first. Things I probably should have told you years ago. We sat at my dining table, now cleared of the party debris. Grace looked uncomfortable, which was unusual for my normally confident aunt. This isn't the first time your parents have expected you to bail Melissa out, she began. You know about the college tuition and the car they bought her after her second divorce. But there's more. She explained that my parents had been systematically enabling Melissa's irresponsibility for years. They'd paid off credit card debt, covered bounce checks, and even taken out a second mortgage on their home to handle one particularly bad financial crisis caused by what Grace delicately referred to as Melissa's gambling problem. Gambling problem? I repeated, stunned. I had no idea. They've worked hard to keep it quiet, Grace explained. It started after her first divorce. Online poker at first, then casino trips. She's supposedly in recovery now, but... She trailed off, her expression doubtful. Is that why she got evicted? Not because the landlord is selling the building. Grace nodded grimly. From what I understand, there was significant damage to the apartment. Unauthorized renovations she made while intoxicated, unpaid rent, complaints from neighbors. Your parents have been helping her search for a new place, but no landlord wants to take a chance once they check her rental history. I sat back, pieces falling into place. So, when they couldn't find anyone to rent to her, they decided your house was the solution, Grace confirmed. Margaret called me last week to feel out whether I thought you might do the right thing. I told her she was being ridiculous, but clearly they decided to move forward anyway. Allison, who had been quietly listening, shook her head in disbelief. The audacity is almost impressive. There's something else, Grace added hesitantly. That paperwork your mother brought? I caught a glimpse of it. Harper, it wasn't just a deed transfer. There was something about adding your parents as co-signers to your mortgage. What? I felt sick. They wanted me to make them legally responsible for my house? Why would they? So they could control it, Allison finished, understanding immediately. If they were co-signers and you moved out, they'd have legal standing to determine who lived there. The full scope of their plan hit me. They hadn't just wanted me to give Melissa my house. They'd wanted to take legal control of my most significant asset. If I'd signed those papers, I can't believe they would do this, I whispered. I can, Grace said sadly. They've been cleaning up Melissa's messes for so long, they've lost perspective. They don't see it as taking advantage of you. They see it as solving a family problem in the most efficient way. After Grace left, promising to check in tomorrow, Allison insisted on staying the night. We opened a bottle of wine and moved to the back patio, where the evening air helped clear my head. What now? Allison asked as we watched the stars appear. I don't know, I admitted. I've never been disowned before. Give it a week, she predicted. Your mom will call once she realizes you're serious about keeping your house. They'll try a different angle. She was right. The first text came from Melissa 3 days later. The kids miss you. Emma keeps asking why Aunt Harper hates us. I didn't respond. 2 days after that, my mother called. When I didn't answer, she left a voicemail. Harper, this silent treatment is very immature. Your father and I are disappointed in your behavior at the housewarming. We raised you better than that. Call me back so we can discuss how to move forward.
Again, I didn't respond.
The messages escalated in both frequency and emotional manipulation over the following week. My father claimed my mother was having chest pains from stress, a tactic he'd used before when not getting his way. Melissa sent photos of the children looking sad. My mother left tear-filled voicemails about family loyalty. I saved each message, but remained firm in my silence. Then came the flying monkeys. My cousin Jack called, ostensibly to check in, but quickly pivoted to suggesting I reconsider my position for the sake of family harmony. A distant aunt I barely knew sent a Facebook message telling me how unchristian my behavior was. Even my mother's bridge club friend called, claiming she was worried about Margaret. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries. I blocked numbers when necessary. I limited social media. I focused on work and making my house even more my own by completing renovation projects I'd been planning. Aunt Grace kept me updated on family dynamics, reporting that my parents were genuinely shocked by my resistance. They really believed you'd give in eventually, she told me. They don't know what to do with this new Harper who stands her ground. About 3 weeks after the disastrous housewarming, I received a text from my father that simply read, "We need to talk. In person." After consulting with both Grace and Allison, I agreed to meet my parents at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our homes. I arrived early, chose a table with good sight lines to the exit, and ordered a latte to calm my nerves. They arrived precisely on time, looking uncomfortable in the casual setting. My mother's face showed signs of genuine stress, and my father's usual confident posture was diminished. "Thank you for meeting us," he began stiffly after they'd gotten their drinks. "Of course," I replied neutrally. "What did you want to discuss?" My mother couldn't maintain the formal facade. "Harper, this has gone on long enough. It's time to put this foolishness behind us and be a family again. I'm not the one who declared I wasn't welcome in the family home," I reminded her calmly. "You threw us out of your house, my father countered. After you tried to pressure me into giving it away, I pointed out. But I didn't come here to rehash the past. What do you want? They exchanged glances before my father spoke. We've found a solution for Melissa's housing situation. That's good to hear, I said, genuine relief in my voice. We're buying her condo, my mother explained. It's not as nice as your house, of course, but it has 3 bedrooms and is in a decent school district. I nodded, waiting for them to continue. We had to take money from our retirement fund, my father added, a hint of martyrdom in his tone. But family comes first.
There it was.
The subtle guilt trip. The implication that while they were sacrificing for Melissa, I had refused to help. I'm glad you found a solution that works, I said, refusing to take the bait. My mother looked disappointed by my lack of guilt. So, now that this unpleasantness is behind us, when are you coming for Sunday dinner? The children miss you. I took a deep breath. I'm not ready for that yet. What? My mother looked genuinely shocked. But we've solved the problem. Everything can go back to normal now. That's just it, Mom. I don't want things to go back to normal. Normal in our family means my feelings and boundaries don't matter. Normal means Melissa's needs automatically outrank mine. I can't do normal anymore. My father's expression hardened. So, you're still punishing us? No, I said firmly. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. What do you want from us? My mother asked, exasperated. An apology? Fine, we're sorry we suggested you give your house to your sister. Happy now? The insincerity was so blatant, I almost laughed. An apology would be a start, but only if you actually understand what you're apologizing for. Do you understand why what you did was wrong? They exchanged confused glances. We might have been a bit presumptuous, my father conceded grudgingly. You tried to take my house, I corrected. You brought legal documents to trick me into signing away my property. You told my nieces and nephew they could move in before even discussing it with me. You called me selfish for not giving away my biggest asset. And when I refused, you cut me off from the family. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We were desperate. Melissa had nowhere to go. That's not true, though, is it? You always had the option to buy her a place, which you've now done. You just try to take the easy route first, the one that cost you nothing and me everything. We've always supported both our daughters equally, my father insisted, falling back on the family mythology. Dad, that's simply not true. I've never asked for financial help. I put myself through college. I saved for my own house. Meanwhile, you've bailed Melissa out repeatedly, even taking a second mortgage on your home to cover her gambling debts. Their shocked expressions confirmed what Grace had told me was true. How did you dash? My mother began. It doesn't matter how I know, I interrupted. What matters is that we acknowledge the truth. Our family has unhealthy dynamics that have hurt all of us, including Melissa. Constantly rescuing her hasn't helped her become more responsible. So, what are you saying? My father asked tensely. That we should have let her and the children be homeless? I'm saying there's a difference between supporting someone and enabling them. I'm saying my boundaries deserve respect. I'm saying I want a relationship with my family, but not if it means sacrificing my own well-being. The conversation continued for another hour. There were tears, mostly my mother's, defensive arguments, mostly my father's, and several near walkouts. But for perhaps the first time in our family history, we had an honest conversation. I didn't get the full apology or acknowledgement I'd hoped for, but I did establish clear boundaries for moving forward. I would attend family gatherings once a month. I would maintain my relationship with my nieces and nephew through properly scheduled visits. I would not discuss financial matters with my parents or Melissa. And no one, absolutely no one, would make demands on my property or possessions. In the months that followed, I worked with a therapist to process the family trauma and build confidence in my boundaries. Aunt Grace became an even more important figure in my life, offering the unconditional support I'd always craved from my parents. Melissa moved into her new condo, courtesy of our parents' retirement fund. She occasionally sent passive-aggressive texts about how much smaller it was than my house, but I let those roll off my back. My relationship with my parents remained strained but civil. Old patterns don't disappear overnight, and they still occasionally slipped into comparing my choices unfavorably to Melissa's needs. But now, I had the strength to gently redirect those conversations or end them when necessary. The most meaningful change came in my relationship with myself. For the first time, I recognized my own worth without seeking external validation. My house became truly mine, not just legally, but emotionally. Each room reflected my choices, my taste, my life. The guest room remained a guest room. The home office stayed my sanctuary for work and creativity. And if sometimes, on quiet evenings, I felt a pang of loneliness for the unconditional family acceptance I'd never had, I reminded myself that I'd gained something more valuable, self-respect and the courage to protect it. 6 months after the housewarming party that changed everything, I was pushing a shopping cart through Target when I heard a familiar voice call my name. Turning, I saw Melissa with Emma and Dylan trailing behind her, Sophia seated in the cart. "Harper, what a coincidence," Melissa said, her tone artificially bright. This was our first unplanned encounter since the confrontation. "Hi," I replied cautiously, then smiled at the children. "Hey, kids. You've all grown so much." Emma regarded me warily, clearly remembering the drama, but Dylan grinned and showed me a toy car in his hand. Sophia, now almost 4, hid her face shyly. "How have you been?" Melissa asked, an undercurrent of tension in her voice.
Good.
"Busy with work. The house is coming along nicely." I couldn't help adding that last part. Melissa's smile tightened. "That's nice. We're settled in the condo now. It's adequate. Mom and Dad had to buy all new furniture since there wasn't enough space for our old things." The familiar guilt trip attempt rolled off me like water. "I'm glad you found a place that works for your family." She seemed disappointed by my lack of reaction. "Mom says you're coming to Easter dinner next week." "Yes, I'll be there," I confirmed, having agreed to the monthly family gathering as part of our new boundaries. An awkward silence fell between us. The old Harper would have filled it with apologies or offers of help. The new Harper simply waited. "Well," Melissa finally said, "I should get these 3 home for lunch. See you at Easter, I guess." As they walked away, I overheard Emma ask, "Mom, why don't we ever go to Aunt Harper's house anymore?" "Because Aunt Harper doesn't want to share," Melissa responded, loud enough to ensure I heard. 6 months ago, that comment would have devastated me. Today, I simply shook my head and continued shopping. My sister hadn't changed, but my reaction to her manipulation had. When I got home, I found a text from Aunt Grace. "Checking in. How are you doing with Easter coming up?" I smiled and responded, "Ready this time. No guilt trips are going to work on me." Grace had become my strongest ally through this family transformation. She'd revealed that she'd gone through something similar with my mother years ago, which explained their sometimes strained relationship. Her guidance had been invaluable as I navigated establishing healthy boundaries. My parents had indeed purchased a condo for Melissa using money from their retirement account. According to Grace, it had created financial strain they hadn't anticipated, leading to my father postponing his planned retirement. Yet they'd never asked me for help or acknowledged that their initial plan to take my house would have been disastrous for everyone involved. Some family dynamics never change. But my participation in those dynamics had transformed completely. I spent the evening working in my garden, a new hobby I discovered during my months of limited family contact. There was something profoundly satisfying about nurturing plants, watching them grow stronger with proper care and boundaries. As I knelt in the soil, planting spring bulbs that would bloom in the coming months, I reflected on everything that had happened since that fateful housewarming party. The initial pain of family rejection had been intense, but ultimately clarifying. For the first time, I'd seen the unhealthy patterns that had defined our relationships for decades. My parents' favoritism toward Melissa. My sister's learned helplessness. My own desperate need for approval that led me to sacrifice my needs repeatedly. Breaking free from those patterns hadn't been easy. There had been sleepless nights questioning my decisions. tearful conversations with my therapist about family loyalty versus self-respect. Difficult moments when well-meaning friends suggested I should just forgive and forget for the sake of family peace. But I'd held firm to my new boundaries, and slowly, a different kind of peace had emerged. Not the false harmony of compliance, but the authentic serenity of living in alignment with my values. My house had transformed as well. What had once felt almost like a defensive achievement, proof that I could succeed on my own, now felt like a genuine home. I'd painted the living room a color I loved rather than the neutral shade I thought would please visitors. I'd converted part of the backyard into a vegetable garden. I'd adopted a cat from the local shelter, something I'd always wanted but had hesitated to do while still seeking family approval. Most significantly, I'd started hosting small gatherings for friends, people who respected my boundaries and celebrated my successes without qualification. My home had become a place of authentic connection rather than performative family obligation. I'd also begun building a different kind of relationship with my nieces and nephew. Instead of being the aunt who appeared at family gatherings with gifts and then disappeared, I now had regular scheduled visits with them. Sometimes we went to museums or parks. Other times, they came to my house for baking sessions or movie nights. These interactions happened without Melissa present, allowing me to form bonds with the children based on genuine connection rather than family politics. The journey hadn't been linear. There had been setbacks, moments when I slipped into old patterns of guilt and self-doubt. Times when I questioned whether maintaining boundaries was worth the ongoing family tension. Occasions when I longed for the simplicity of just giving in. But with each challenge, my resolve had strengthened. I discovered that standing up for myself wasn't selfish. It was necessary. That saying no to unreasonable demands wasn't cruel. It was healthy. That prioritizing my own well-being wasn't selfish. It was essential. As the sun began to set over my garden, I sat back on my heels and surveyed my work. The bulbs were all planted, invisible now but full of potential. In a few months, they would push through the soil and bloom beautifully, not because I had forced them, but because I had created the right conditions for their natural growth. In many ways, that was the perfect metaphor for my own transformation. By creating the right conditions, healthy boundaries, self-respect, authentic relationships, I had allowed my true self to emerge and flourish. The house around me stood solid and secure, a physical manifestation of my hard work and determination. But more than that, it represented my freedom to choose my own path, to define success on my own terms, to live a life that reflected my values rather than others' expectations. As I gathered my gardening tools and headed inside, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not just for the material security of homeownership, but for the emotional security of knowing my own worth. Not just for the boundaries I'd established with my family, but for the self-trust that had made those boundaries possible. The journey hadn't been easy, and it wasn't over. Family dynamics don't transform overnight, and old patterns have a way of reasserting themselves in moments of stress. Easter dinner next week would undoubtedly bring challenges. There would be subtle digs about my big empty house and pointed comments about Melissa's sacrifices as a mother. But I was ready, not armored for battle, but grounded in self-respect. Not seeking approval, but offering authentic presence. Not demanding perfection, but requiring basic respect. In standing up to my family's unreasonable demands, I hadn't just kept my house. I'd reclaimed my power. I discovered that true family doesn't require surrender of self, that genuine love doesn't demand sacrifice of boundaries, that real support elevates rather than diminishes. And that, ultimately, was the most valuable thing I'd built, not the house with its physical walls, but the inner sanctuary of self-worth that no one could ever take away.
So, what about you?
Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure or unreasonable demands? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content about setting boundaries and honoring your own journey. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to stand firm in your truth.